The cul-de-sac in which I reside is an idyllic slice of suburbia where each home stands like a carefully curated exhibit in a museum of uniformity. The lawns are eternally green, cultivated under the watchful eye of the homeowners association. Their bylaws are etched in stone, or at least laminated in plastic, posted prominently near the community bulletin board. It is a place where deviation is discouraged and the art of conformity is celebrated like a fifth season. My little corner of this suburban utopia is shared with Max, a golden retriever puppy whose only malice lies in his propensity to wag his tail with reckless abandon. His existence is one of unbridled joy, as if the universe itself is a canvas, and his happiness the paint. Yet, it is precisely this uncontainable exuberance that has drawn the ire of Karen from 3 doors down. Karen. Her name is synonymous with order and regulation. She wears her authority like a badge, gleaming and unyielding. It was no surprise, really, when the first complaint arrived. A neatly typed note slipped under my door, detailing Max's alleged transgressions. Dangerous. It declared a menace to our peaceful enclave. The words felt like stones hurled with precision, aimed to bruise. In truth, there is hardly a creature more harmless than Max. His bark, a mere suggestion of sound, is no match for the droning hum of leaf blowers or the distant echo of lawnmowers that serenade our weekends. But rules, as Karen sees them, are not merely suggestions. They are gospel. And so she began her crusade, her presence as constant as the sunrise. I found it almost amusing at first the way she would patrol the neighborhood clipboard in hand as if appointed by some divine entity to safeguard our sanctity. Her gaze, steely and relentless, would follow Max and me during our evening strolls, noting each perceived infraction with the diligence of a prosecutor building a case. It was a dance of absurdity, one that I was content to step around with a smile. Yet, beneath the surface of my calm facade, a quiet storm brewed. It was not anger, but a simmering resolve, a determination to preserve the peace that Max and I so cherished. I resolved to respond with actions, not words, navigating the labyrinthine HOA rules with the same precision Karen wielded against us. It was during one of these introspective moments, pondering the ironies of life in our peculiar neighborhood, that an unexpected revelation struck me. Karen's meticulousness. Her need for control was not limited to the realm of human affairs. Her treatment of her own pet, a perpetually trembling poodle, was far from the maternal care she so vociferously demanded of others. There was something unsettling in the way she interacted with it, a discord between her public persona and private actions. Armed with this insight, I began to weave a plan. Not one of vengeance, but of justice. I knew the landscape of our community, its rules and its loopholes well enough to turn the tide. And so, with each new day, I watched and waited like a sculptor, chiseling away at a block of marble, revealing the form hidden within. In the quiet of my home, I crafted my response not with hostility, but with the same precision Karen had taught me, the irony not lost on me. It was a lesson I intended to repay in kind, not with the bark of a golden retriever, but with the bite of truth hidden in plain sight. The morning after the HOA meeting, the neighborhood felt different. It was as if the air itself had shifted, tinted with a peculiar mixture of anxiety and intrigue. My walk with Bella was accompanied by more than the usual nods and smiles. There were whispers, now urgent and barely concealed, behind coffee mugs and hedges. Karen, it seemed, had not been idle. She wielded her influence like a sledgehammer, and the shockwaves were impossible to ignore. The first sign was the note slipped under my door, written in perfect looping cursive on HOA letterhead. It was an inventory of infractions, absurd and petty. My grass apparently was a 1/4 inch too long. The garden gnome by the oak tree, a gift from my late grandmother, was deemed aesthetic pollution. But it was the last item that caught my breath. Bella's presence continues to pose a threat to community safety. My heart pounded. Rage simmered beneath the surface, but I swallowed it down, letting the absurdity of it wash over me like a cold tide. Karen had outdone herself this time, twisting the mundane into a weapon of bureaucracy. Her shadow loomed large, but I had long learned the value of patience. Throughout the day, the neighborhood buzzed with an undercurrent of gossip. Karen's latest yarn spun with her usual flair for dramatic embellishment. Her stories were sticky as flypaper, latching onto ears hungry for scandal. Bella had somehow transformed into a beast of legend, her puppy eyes and wagging tail reimagined as instruments of havoc. It was a spectacle, really, like a soap opera unfolding under the guise of suburban life with Karen at its center, orchestrating chaos with a well-practiced hand. I watched her from the window, her movements precise and calculated as she delivered another round of letters, her lips curling into a smile that could slice through stone. She reveled in this role, grande dame of order and propriety. But I saw the fragility beneath her polished veneer, the cracks in her carefully constructed world, and there, amidst the absurdity, lay my opportunity. It was time to turn the narrative. I took my laptop to the kitchen table, setting Bella by my feet, her warmth a reassuring presence. The quiet determination in my heart matched the rhythmic click of the keys. There was no need for grand gestures. A simple email to the local animal welfare organization sufficed. I attached evidence photos of Karen's own neglected garden, her dog perpetually confined to the back porch without shade or shelter. It was a move as subtle as it was powerful, a shift in the tide only a few would notice at first, but like a stone dropped into a pond, the ripples would spread. The truth had a way of surfacing, no matter how deep it was buried. The days passed. Karen's campaign against Bella escalated her tactics, becoming more desperate, more overt. The artificial tranquility of the HOA's monthly meeting was shattered by the arrival of the animal welfare officers. Their presence was authoritative, decisive. It was as if reality had punctured Karen's carefully constructed world, and the air was ripe with the scent of irony. A single line echoed through the room, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Ma'am, we're here to address a complaint regarding the welfare of your own pet." The words hung in the air, their impact resonating like a bell tolling in the stillness. Karen's face blanched, the color draining like water down a sink. The neighborhood for once was silent. The spectacle had turned, and the audience watched with breathless anticipation. Justice, when it came, had the subtlety of a whisper, yet the power of a storm. And as Bella curled up at my feet, I felt the balance shift. The quiet strength of truth had prevailed, leaving in its wake a neighborhood forever altered. The late afternoon sun stretched its fingers across my kitchen table, casting long shadows over the stack of documents I had meticulously gathered. Each page was a piece of a puzzle, a corner, a side, a centerpiece, slowly revealing the bigger picture I had been silently crafting. Karen had always been a force to be reckoned with at HOA meetings, her voice carrying like a foghorn through fog. But she had underestimated the quiet resolve simmering beneath my polite smiles. Her complaint about my puppy Max being dangerous had been a shot across the bow. A ridiculous accusation, yet one that set this chain of events into motion. I couldn't help but let a small smile play at the corners of my lips as I thought about the irony of it all. Max, with his floppy ears and awkward puppy gait, was about as dangerous as a marshmallow. But Karen's real danger lay in her relentless grip on a perceived power she wielded like a cudgel. The documents on my table were a testament to my diligence, a spreadsheet with dates and incidents recorded in neat, precise rows, photographs discreetly snapped over several weeks of Karen's own dog. A hulking mastiff, visibly underfed and neglected in her backyard. The irony was not lost. In her fervor to cast my innocent puppy as a villain, she had left her own vulnerability exposed. It wasn't difficult gathering the evidence. Karen's belief in her own invincibility made her careless neglect was an insidious thing creeping silently until it left a shadow too large to ignore. I had watched from my window as her mastiff gazed longingly at the garage. His water bowl tipped over food. Scarce, it would have been heartbreaking, if not for the cold, hard resolve it instilled in me. This was more than just revenge. It was about justice. I felt the weight of it, a quiet, persistent ache in my chest. I didn't want to destroy her just to hold a mirror up so she could see the reflection of her own hypocrisy. I collated the evidence ready for submission. My heart thrummed steadily, a quiet drumbeat echoing the anticipation. The HOA meeting loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, and I was ready to step into the squall. As the day of reckoning arrived, the community center hummed with the pre-meeting murmur, a symphony of small talk and speculation. I caught Karen's eye across the room. Her expression was casual, smug, almost as though she had already chased away the specter of my challenge. My calm demeanor seemed to unnerve her good. When the floor opened for new business, I stepped forward. Heart-steady voice. Unwavering, I presented my case. There was a moment, a suspended breath, when the room teetered on the brink of comprehension. Then a shift, the tide turning. Karen's expression flickered, the veneer of control cracking. The irony was delicious. In her attempt to paint me as the negligent one, she had unknowingly sealed her own fate. The board took in the evidence the stark reality laid bare. They voted swiftly, decisively. A fine for Karen, not only monetary, but a mandate to improve conditions for her neglected pet. Justice, though bittersweet, was served. I watched Karen's face as the verdict settled like a winter frost. Her lips pressed into a thin line, eyes narrowing in disbelief. She had lost this battle. But more importantly, her reign of petty terror had met its match. As the meeting adjourned, I felt a lightness, a clarity that comes from standing firm. Max greeted me at the door, tail wagging with joyful abandon, unaware of the silent war fought and won on his behalf. As I knelt to ruffle his fur, I realized it wasn't just about winning. It was about ensuring that bullies, even those masquerading behind HOA titles, learned accountability. Justice had been served, and in a way, so had karma. The evening sun cast long shadows across our suburban enclave, a quilt of manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. The world outside my window seemed untouched by the private storm that quietly brewed within our neighborhood's confines. But some storms are silent, gathering strength in the undercurrents. Karen's accusation had been the crack in the dam. Her voice, a constant shrill backdrop, had now become a symphony of discontent among us all. My puppy, an innocent ball of fur and mischief, had somehow stirred the pot of her insecurities. It was no longer just a grievance. It was a vendetta. And her actions, illogical yet meticulously calculated, were beginning to echo through the community. Neighbors, once indifferent, began to notice the tension that simmered beneath the surface. It revealed itself in whispered conversations over white picket fences and in the furtive glances exchanged during evening strolls. Karen's presence was a gust of cold wind, unsettling and ever-present, rattling the peace like a wayward leaf caught in a relentless breeze. Walking my puppy now felt like a scene in a play, each curtain rising to a fresh audience of watchful eyes and murmured judgments. Their gazes were a palpable weight, a testament to the shifting tides I could feel. The shift like a tide withdrawing before the inevitable crash of waves. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to brand my puppy as dangerous, Karen had unwittingly drawn her own character into sharp relief. She became the embodiment of the very chaos she sought to control her actions, laced with irony too rich to script. Then came the day when her missteps found consequence. It was subtle at first. A note slipped beneath her door. The weight of the HOA's decision pressed into crisp paper. The fine for animal abuse was not just a price to pay, it was a verdict. A silent judgment passed by neighbors who had seen enough. It was the turning point, a shift in the neighborhood's delicate balance. Yet, as satisfying as the moment was, it was also bittersweet. The landscape of our community had changed, and the air felt different. The laughter of children playing in the street seemed muted, as if aware of the fracture that lay beneath their feet. The camaraderie of neighbors was tinged with the sharp taste of caution. Karen, ever defiant, refused to acknowledge the change. She walked with a rigid spine, her eyes daring anyone to confront her, yet there was a fragility to her stance now. I wondered if she felt the isolation creeping in the alienation born not from her actions alone, but from the collective realization of who she had chosen to become. In the quiet corners of my mind, I pondered the nature of power and how it shifts, how easily it slips from the hands of those who wield it like a weapon. The irony again was deliciously cruel. In her quest to control, Karen had lost her grip entirely. The evening light softened, casting a gentle glow over the houses I watched as my puppy chased shadows in the yard, blissfully unaware of the complexities swirling around him. His innocence was a balm to my thoughts, a reminder that life in its simplest form endures beyond our petty squabbles. As I turned to head inside, I felt the weight of the neighborhood's gaze lift, if only slightly. The storm had not passed, but perhaps we had weathered the worst. Tensions remained like embers beneath ash, but there was hope that with time they might cool, leaving only the memory of a fire that once threatened to consume us all. In the distance, Karen's figure receded, her silhouette blending into the twilight. For the first time, I felt a gentle victory in the silence that followed, an acknowledgement that sometimes justice is not loud, but quietly, profoundly resolute. The morning was crisp, the kind that whispered promises of change on the edge of a breeze. I stood by my window watching the world wake up around me. Leaves like golden confetti danced across the lawn, and for a moment I let myself believe that everything was going to be all right. The neighborhood seemed peaceful, almost serene, but I knew better than to trust appearances. Karen had finally overreached reporting my puppy. As dangerous was her grand masterpiece of pettiness, a move so absurd it almost seemed like satire. Yet this was reality, and I had a plan. I had grown tired of her antics, her iron grip on the community, and her endless stream of complaints that flowed as predictably as the tides. I had been quiet, calculating, patient. While she lived in the spotlight of her self-appointed domain, I preferred the shadows where actions spoke louder than words. The irony of her hypocrisy wasn't lost on me. She who viewed herself as the guardian of neighborhood peace had neglected the simplest of duties, caring for her own pet. It was this negligence that would become her undoing. The first step was research. I dove into statutes and regulations, poring over legal documents with the same fervor she devoted to bylaws. I found what I needed: clear evidence of her violations. Evidence of neglect that could not be ignored. The creature she had neglected was more than a footnote in this rivalry. It was a symbol of her own failings. The second step was documentation. I collected photographs, notes, and any complaints others had made, a tapestry of her carelessness. I moved with quiet precision, each piece I gathered fitting perfectly into the broader picture. The dossier grew like a storm, gathering strength and purpose. Finally, with everything in place, I reached out to those who could make a difference. Not with drama or flair, but with the unyielding force of truth. I spoke with the right authorities, weaving a narrative that was undeniable. The truth had a way of cutting through the noise, sharp and clean. I knew it would be my strongest ally. Days passed, each one heavier with anticipation. I kept my composure even as she continued her reign of trivial terror. But beneath the surface of my calm exterior there was a simmering resolve. The kind that knows patience is not just a virtue, but a weapon. Then one afternoon, the call came through. A simple acknowledgement that action had been taken. It was swift and resolute, like a judge's gavel striking down. Later, as I walked past her house, I noticed the curtains drawn tightly, a fortress beneath siege. The neighborhood was strangely silent, as if holding its breath. I could almost sense the whisperings, the realization spreading like ripples in water. The scales had tipped. She would face consequences not from me directly, but from an impartial system that valued fairness over her petty tyranny. I thought of my puppy. Then his innocent eyes, full of trust, blissfully unaware of the storm he had weathered. In the end, it was not about revenge, but about justice. A quiet, yet powerful assertion of balance restored. The leaves continued to dance in the wind, indifferent to the human dramas unfolding below. And somewhere in that rustling symphony I found peace. The morning was unusually quiet, as if the neighborhood held its breath, waiting for the scales of justice to tip. I walked past Karen's house, its facade as polished and unyielding as her scowl. Her blinds, normally drawn in a constant state of surveillance, were closed tight. A fortress turned inward. My steps echoed on the pavement, a metronome measuring patience. Our community meeting was set for noon, and the air clung with anticipation. I could feel the weight of the past months settling into the pit of my stomach, where irritation and resolve burned in equal measure. The soundtrack of my thoughts was underscored by the gentle rhythm of my puppy's paws padding beside me, a testament to innocence and resilience. I arrived at the clubhouse early. The room was empty, but for the taste of anticipation that flitted like dust motes in sunlight, I chose a seat away from the podium, preferring an observer's perch. The minutes ticked by a slow drip of expectation. The room began to fill a tide of familiar faces. Neighbors who had become allies, friends, witnesses. Karen strode in her usual confidence, cracked by whispers she could not control. Her eyes flicked around the room, a hawk scanning for prey, settling finally on the podium. Her armor was her certainty, but today it bore the rust of inevitability. The tension sat heavy, a fog eclipsing the room's brightness. As proceedings began, I watched my neighbors speak their voices, weaving a tapestry of shared grievances and solidarity. Each word was a thread pulled taut in the fabric of our community's justice. Karen's expression shifted subtly with each testimony, a glacier slowly losing its stoic edges to the sun's warmth. My turn came, and I rose with the calm gravity of a tide meeting the shore. I recounted the events, the false accusations against my puppy, each word a pebble placed in the scales. The evidence of her duplicity, her malice was laid bare without grandeur, just facts plain and unadorned. The truth needed no embellishment. The silence that followed was profound, a deep breath before the plunge. Eyes turned to Karen, her composure fraying at the edges like an old tapestry. Her posture shifted, a slight hunch, as if the weight of her actions suddenly pressed upon her shoulders. A decision was rendered swift and just. A fine, not just a monetary slap, but a rebuke from the heart of the community she sought to manipulate. The ruling was more than discipline. It was a reclamation of peace, a restoration of balance. Karen's departure was marked by a quiet acceptance, the crowd parting like a sea she once commanded. For the first time, her retreat was met not with fear or resentment, but with relief. The community exhaled a collective sigh that felt like spring after a harsh winter. The meeting dispersed with the quiet hum of renewed camaraderie. I lingered soaking in the room's warming spirit. My puppy wagged his tail, a small beacon of happiness, his presence a reminder of the innocence that had triumphed. My heart swelled with a quiet pride. Walking home, the neighborhood felt different, softer. Somehow the shadows were shorter, and the sun's glow skipped playfully across the rooftops. I paused outside Karen's house. Her blinds remained closed, but through the silence, I sensed a change, a reclusion that suggested introspection. As I turned the key in my lock, the door swung open to the familiar scent of home, a sanctuary reclaimed. I glanced down at my puppy, who looked up with eyes full of trust and joy. We stepped inside, closing the door gently on the past. The future lay ahead, unburdened and bright.